Hello and welcome to my desktop. Now I'm going to start today's video with a little bit of shopping. For a while now I've been wanting to build a 450 size quadcopter, and I thought, why not record the process so that we've got literally from buying it in the shop to building it to flying it. So that's what I'm going to do. So this is going to be quite a long video, guys, so get your favorite beverage, relax, and let's watch me make some really bad decisions. Okay, so this is going to be a really cheap quadcopter. It's my first kind of bigger quadcopter size. Anyone who's seen my channel before will know that I deal with mainly micro quadcopters and kind of the smaller 250 size quadcopters, but I'm going bigger on this. So I want to go cheap because I'm building the whole thing from scratch using parts, and I anticipate that I'm gonna make a few mistakes along the way, and that's why I want to record this so that you can watch my mistakes and not make them, and hopefully follow along and build yourself a cheap quadcopter. That's the idea anyway. So let's start off. I'm going to use two websites, and that is banggood.com and also eBay. Now the first thing that we're going to want to search for is the frame, and the frame that I'm going to use is the cheapest one that I can find. Now, when I sort of started seeing these 450 size quadcopters, I saw like the TBS Discovery and things like that. So that's what I want to go for. And eventually it's going to get upgraded. So we're going to add FPV, we're going to like add APM to it and UHF and things like that. I'm not going to do that in this video. We're just going to build the quadcopter as cheap as possible, hopefully get it flying, and then we can add all that other stuff in a later video. So the first thing I'm going to search for is the frame, and it comes under lots of different names, this one, but if you search for Alien X on Banggood, it should hopefully come up. So you can see there, it's also known as the HJMWC X mode alien multicopter. I think on some websites it's known as the Reptile, and there is an updated version of this which is very similar to the TBS Discovery, and they call that the Reptile V2, but it's much more expensive. It's about £27 for that one, and this one's only £11. So I'm gonna base it on this one. So let's go into here and let's add it to our cart. Now, this website is based in China. I do tend to find that it runs a little bit slow, but the customer service of this website is absolutely awesome. I have had a few defective products, but they just send you another one. They don't even expect to have it sent back, so big props to this website. I use it a lot. Anyways, I'm digressing. Let's add this to the cart. Now, it is a little bit buggy, so I need to check that they're going to get added, okay? So the next thing that I'm going to search for is the ESCs. So I'm going to search for that by typing in Simon K 30 amp ESCs. Okay, these are the best kind of firmware for ESCs. So let's go into there. Now you can see here that it says 2 to 3S, but I have read up on this, and I should say I've read up about all of this. I'm not going into this absolutely blind, so you can have confidence in the fact that this thing is going to fly, okay? So yeah, we want 4 of these. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, and this is going to be a 3-cell / 4-cell setup. These ESCs do work off 4-cell, so that's fine. So let's do 4 and add to cart. And hopefully it does get added. Yeah, there we go. So the next thing that we want is the flight controller, and again we're going cheap as we can, so CC3D. This flight controller has a reputation of being really easy to set up, so hopefully we'll see that later. I'm going to go for this one. There are different versions of it, like a smaller version, things like that. I'm going to go into here and buy it. Add to cart. You can get like vibration dampeners and stuff for it, but seeing as it comes in this little case already, I'm just going to use like double-sided tape for it, okay? Add it to the cart. Is that there now? Yeah, add it to cart. Okay, right, so the next thing that we're going to get from Banggood is the transmitter and receiver, and the one that I'm going to go for is the FlySky transmitter. And that is because it is really cheap. It's kind of between this one and the Turnigy 9X. The reason why I'm going for this one, though, is I know it a bit better. Anyone who's seen my channel will have seen my review of the Flying 3D X6, and it does use a variation of this transmitter. And also, if you upgrade the receiver at a later date, it can produce telemetry, and it's really cheap, Luke, £36. You know, it's about the same price though as the Turnigy. We want mode 1, but obviously if you fly mode 2, you want to go for that. So let's add it to cart. Did that work? Let's see. Yeah, so the idea is that I'm gonna like tally all this up once I've bought all the parts. I get asked two things in the field, and that is, how much does that cost, mate? And how far can it go away? And they're two very difficult questions. So, it kind of depends what you already have. There's going to be some things that I assume that you already have, certain tools. So I'm going to do a sort of bare minimum to get it in the sky, taking into consideration that you may have some tools. And then we're going to add all the tools as well to get a complete price. Okay, so I think that might be everything that we have from Banggood. I'm going to go and get the motors from eBay. Now, this size quadcopter has 2212 motors. You can have other motors as well, 2216. Basically, the more that you want to lift, the kind of lower kV that you want. So let's go down here and see if we can find them. Yeah, this is what we want here. These are actually DJI clone motors, so the DJI Phantom 2. You can see that 920 kV, and the lower the kV, the more weight that it's going to pull, but these are going to work. Okay, so let's go in there. These are the cheapest, like £22 for 4, so that's like less than £6 for one motor. If we were adding Sunny Sky motors, which are the sort of, the top model for quadcopters, they can be up to like £12 to £16 a motor. And seeing as that we might blow a few of these up with kind of not knowing what I'm doing, then this is why I'm going uber cheap. Some people say, well, you end up going expensive anyways, but yeah, I plan on doing that. I just don't want to blow up my expensive motors. Okay, right, so let's add that to basket. Okay, now these motors, because they are DJI Phantom motors, let's just go back in here. They use something called a keyed hole, so we're going to need a certain type of propeller for these, and so that's important. So let's do that next. The propellers that I'm going to search for are 10-inch propellers with 45 pitch, so 10045, and we're going to want keyed hole, and that just means that when the propellers slide over here, they're going to lock in place basically. So let's do a search. This is what we want here, the gem fan. Now, I think 9-inch propellers, they are going to work, but they're going to have to work really hard. I think 10-inch propellers are going to be a better setup for this, especially if later we're going to add heavier things like a gimbal, FPV, APM, and things like that. So this is going to be a 10-inch propeller quadcopter. Okay, so we want 1 times clockwise and 1 times counterclockwise, and then the size we want 10045. Okay, and add to basket. And actually, we want 2 of those, a quantity of 2, because this is 2 propellers there, and we want 4. Of course, you want to buy lots of propellers, but this is just bare minimum to get you in the air. So let's update the quantity to 2. And that should come, yeah, £7.98. It's quite expensive for propellers. You can probably find them cheaper, but I find it really difficult actually to find these keyed hole ones. It's a consequence of going for really cheap motors. Okay, so what else do we need? We've got motors, propellers, transmitter, CC3D, ESCs. Okay, so we're gonna want things like bullet connectors to solder stuff together. So let's type in, I think I found some really cheap bullet connectors by searching for 40 3.5 millimeter bullet Hopefully it doesn't come up with any bullets for guns. It's a difficult one when searching for these. 20 pairs, 40 sets, £2.18. That's a really good price. Let's go for that one. Add to basket. I think for a first quadcopter, to get the rotation of the motor correct, you're going to want to switch them around a lot. So we're going to add bullet connectors to this. And so we're also going to need heat shrink. So let's just search for heat shrink. They're really simple to search for. You just have to know what to search for. So there we go. Heat shrink. Add to basket. Lots of different sizes there. Okay, so we're going to need a power distribution board. Now, again, this isn't essential. You can put all your ESC wires together. I don't want to mess with that. And power distribution boards are so cheap. Power distribution board. Power distribution. It's just going to come up with warm sockets. Board. Power distribution board. And I think we can get these really cheap anyways. Let's have a look down here. Yeah, look at that, £1.17 from China. And the idea is, right, that your ESCs come in here like that, your plus and minus. Now, the Alien X frame comes with standoffs that are meant for a flight controller, right? But we can just stick our flight controller on with double-sided tape. So we can use the standoffs and put this at an angle so that our ESCs can all wire up there. And then we plug our battery connector, we solder it into here. All this is going to need to be soldered. So yeah, we're using plugs for the motors, but no need to use plugs for the ESCs. I guess, you know, you could do for if you're burning an ESC out, but I'm just going to solder them straight to there. The bullet connectors are for the motors. And that reminds me that next thing I want to do is get a connector, a different connector, because the batteries that I already have use XT60 connectors, and this is a Dean's connector. Now, you're probably going to save some money if you just buy batteries with a Dean connector, but I don't. I already have XT60 connectors, so you might not need to do this step. So I'm going to search for XT60 and then cable, because I'm lazy. I don't want to solder the connector and the cable together. So let's see, this is what we want here. £2.39. It's a little bit expensive for what it is, but it's just me being lazy with having the cable already connected. So add to basket. Yeah, so the battery kind of is essential. Another couple of essential things, cable ties. You need cable ties. You may already have them, so, you know, it is difficult for me to sort of budget for what you already have, but let's search for cable ties. I think I did, or zip ties, you know, cable ties, and I think if I search for 175 of them, this is what we want. It comes in a nice tube so that you can store them nicely. Okay, let's add that to basket. And one thing that I think is essential as well is a voltage checker, because you don't want to be ruining your batteries. So a LiPo battery can't really go any lower than 3.3 volts per cell. So you want one of these. So let's type in LiPo voltage checker. They're really cheap. Some places have them dearer than others, but we should find a cheap one somewhere. There we go. That's the money, isn't it? Let's go for that. You literally just plug your balance plug into here. You can set here with this button the lowest voltage. I would suggest 3.7 volts per cell just to be safe, so you don't ruin your battery. Add to basket. So let's see, is there anything essential that I have missed? Motors, propellers, bullet connectors, heat shrink. Yeah, did it get the power? I didn't put the power distribution board in. Let's search for that. Power distribution board. What? board. That's something you have to be careful with when buying stuff in bulk like this. Sometimes it doesn't add to your basket properly. Add the basket. There we go. Okay, so I think the only thing that we've got missing now is the battery, and you may already have a battery. So let's just calculate this up and see how much it all costs at the moment, because yeah, I think this is essential. Power distribution board, bullet connectors, yes. Okay. So that's £42.22 plus, go to here, let's view the cart items, and then £78.86, £78.86. So, you know, you're looking at £121, and believe me, that is budget. It sounds like a lot, but if you went for really expensive ESCs, like a TBS top and bottom plate on its own costs £64. So this, even though it's come to £121, it is budget. And again, you could probably shave off a couple of pounds there if you've already got cable ties and if you've already got a voltage checker. It's really hard for me to know what you already have. So we're going to want a battery. I'm going to include a battery in the price, and the battery that I'm going to use is a 3S for the budget battery. We'll get into the 4S battery that I use later. So I'm going to search for 3S 3000 milliamp, and we're going to go for this one. Like, seriously cheap. It's only 20C. As the C rating goes up, the price goes up, but this is going to be enough to get our quadcopter in the air. So £7 postage. Let's go into there and add to basket. And hopefully that's going to work. So let's add that to the price. So plus £11.82 plus £7, £139 with the battery. That's your kind of bare minimum. So when someone says to me, how much does it cost? I'll say £139. That is if you have all the tools, okay? So now that we've got kind of our main price, let's start adding stuff. Loctite medium. That's what we want, the medium one. It usually comes in a blue bottle. Medium strength blue. There we go. Let's go for that. Add to basket. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna want some spare screws. So quadcopter screws. And let's see what comes up with here. Yeah, this is what we want. These are the screws for the arms. Despite using Loctite, you're going to want some spares because the kit's really cheap and it may not have enough screws. I've not really had a problem with that, but anyways, add that to the basket. Make sure that it's adding it to the basket correctly. Come on. Yeah, it seems to be. So we want quadcopter arm screw, not arm screws, motor screws. Let's see here. Yeah, this is what we want. There's slightly different size screw to the arm screws. So add to basket. It's getting quite a lot of stuff, isn't it? So we want solder and a soldering iron. Okay, so let's type in solder or solder, and I'm gonna go for leaded solder just because it melts much easier. There we go, 99 pence from China. Good old China. Where are we? Add to basket. There we go. And let's get a soldering iron. Now, the soldering iron I use is like a really cheap one. You can spend a bit more and get like these grips and stuff. But for soldering, I just use like a pair of pliers with a rubber band around it. So we want like a really cheap one. There we go. It's cheap and nasty, but it's going to work. It doesn't have like a temperature gauge or anything. £4.49. So I'm keeping it within the budget here. Add that to the basket. So, is there anything else that we need? I think we might have everything there, you know? Soldering iron, solder, extra screws, Loctite, zippy battery, power distribution board. Oh, there's a lot of stuff here, isn't there? The postman is not going to be happy with me. Yeah, so I think that is everything, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the 4S battery that I use, and that is the 4S 4000 milliamp nano. I think it costs about £37. And it's also got like one of these connectors on it as well, so I've got an adapter for that. I'm not going to show you that though, because we're going to fly this with the 3000 milliamp battery. But yeah, this is the nanotech battery. They're really good and really powerful. Let's include Allan keys in this. Allan keys, because you do need them. Everyone has Allan keys, and you know, Allan keys aren't just specific to quadcopters. There we go. Let's just get this one. 30 piece. That should do it. Add to basket. So I'm not including the price of a charger in this. If you want to see a good charger, check out my channel where I review the Sky RC B6 AC charger. That's a really good charger. Right, I think that is everything. I mean, you know, you could buy a heat gun for the heat shrink. I don't. I just use the soldering iron for that. So let's calculate all this up now, and this is like with all the tools and everything. So let's just cancel that. So we've got £87.73, then plus there we go, £78.86, £78.86. £166.59. So even with all the tools, if you go cheap, you can still get it fairly cheap. Some people might be thinking that's not cheap at all, but trust me, when you can go on eBay, there are people like selling quadcopters that are built already for like 400 quid and 200 quid. You can do it yourself. The only thing that you can't buy on eBay is patience. So you're going to need a lot of patience. I think this is going to take a fair few weeks to get built. So, you know, that is the downside to doing all this. So anyways, let's wait for the postman to turn up, be very angry at me for all these separate parts that we've got, and let's start to build it. So some of the stuff has started to turn up, so let's take a look at what we've got and start building. This is the box with the Alien X frame in, or the Reptile V1, however you want to say it. And I just want to say as well that this video is going to be a little bit different to how I did the micro quad build. The micro quad had enough sort of small steps that I could sort of do a video all in one. This one isn't. It's going to be extremely time consuming, so I'm going to sort of show the basics and then carry on with the build, and then you can sort of see the progress that I'm doing and follow along with yourself if you like. So these are the arms that you get. I've gone for the black and white version. It's really simple construction here. You get the two plates like that. This is the bottom plate, this is the top plate, and literally these arms just screw in like so at the bottom. I mean, you know, I probably don't need to show you this, really. You screw them in there, and then this plate just goes on the top like so. You've got some standoffs that go in there, which which should be in this bag here, and you also get a camera plate as well, which fits on the front there. You've got some rubber balls in here. So these are the main screws that you're going to be using the components out of the bag. These small screws are the ones that screw the arms in. These ones are the ones that screw the motors in from underneath. These are the standoffs that have got screws in the end, of course, and you'll be using these to screw those on. Those just go into this battery bay here. This is the standoff, which you can use for your flight controller, but I'm going to be using that for the power distribution board, and then the rubber dampeners for the front there. You get 4 of those. Now, the first telltale sign that this is a very cheap kit is there are some anomalies. I've found that in this particular one. Look at that. There's no thread on this screw at all. So luckily I've got quite a few of these, but as you saw in my video, I ordered lots of different types of screws. You might want to do that, because first of all, these are probably going to drop off and you're going to need spares, but also the kit has come with a screw with no thread on it. You also get a battery strap, which is a nice touch because you'll be needing that to strap your battery to. But let's skip on to the most tedious bit, I think, of the entire build, and that is soldering stuff. So this is one of the ESCs that have turned up, and you're going to need to, well, you don't have to do this, right? But because I'm new at this, I want to solder bullet connectors on so that the ESC will bullet connect to the motor. That is because I'm expecting to blow some stuff up. Probably a motor is going to blow up in a crash or something like that, and it's just easy to interchange them. However, it is seriously tedious, so I'm just going to show you how to do one, and then you can spend 4 hours, which is how long it's going to take me, on each ESC to put 3 bullet connectors on it, and also 3 bullet connectors on the motor. The motor's in this bag. I've got 3 more of them. It's just for show. So let's get and do that next. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is tin the bullet connector. These are 3.5mm bullet connectors, which is pretty much the standard used on these quadcopters. So I'm just going to tin this one, first of all, and the way that you can do that is you can either put the iron in this hole here in the side and then feed the solder underneath, or you can do it from the top as well. It doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to maneuver this around and see if we can place the iron into the hole like so. So yeah, we're going to first of all tin this, and there's quite a big cup here, and so it takes quite a while to fill it. So here we go, it's starting to take the solder in. But I'm going to have to get a new roll of solder because it takes so much solder doing it this way. But you want to get a good solder joint. So there we go. Seeing as they are probably using unleaded solder, let's just see. Yeah, it's not really taking, so I'm going to mix my solder into it, and then that's going to make sure that we get a good join. So I'm going to do all 3 of those. There we go. It's starting to take, just takes a while, just sort of wrap the solder around there. On to the next one. There we go. And the last one. There we go. Make sure you've got good coverage. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is heat this one back up. Might take a while. Just on the top there. And just keep it warm, and then dip this one in the middle. Push it down and let go. And there we go. That's one done. So I'm going to do that for the other two. And there we go. Now you want to leave those to cool for a while. Maybe you could do all your motors and leave them at this stage, because there is one last important stage. So most solder that we buy is rosin cord, and what that means is you can end up with a rosin film on your bullet connector, and that can create a bad connection. So what you want to do, I've got an egg cup here, I've got some alcohol in there, and if we dip this into the alcohol, then it should dissolve any of the rosin that's left on the top and on the coating. Now this is a really important step. If you don't do this, this is where you can start to get cold solder joints. You can see just there on the top of the connection there, it's sort of black. That's the rosin there. I want to make sure that on the outside we get rid of any of that. So I am dabbing the alcohol off, and that is because we are next going to apply heat shrink, and we don't want this to go up in flames when we apply heat to it, so just make sure you dabble the alcohol away there. Here's my heat shrink tubing, just going to use some scissors to cut it to length. Probably best to use some cutters for this, but I don't have any to hand at the moment. And make sure that you've got a nice straight edge. These scissors aren't the best. And so, I'll probably cut these a bit long actually, but it doesn't matter. So the best thing to use for this is a heat gun. Now I do have one, but I'm lazy and I don't have it to hand. So you will get a neater job with a heat gun, but I'm just gonna use the heat of the soldering iron. It does make your iron a bit messy. You can clean that off. So you want to do this for the motor, but also the ESC as well. And as you can see, it's quite time consuming. Okay, so as you can see, I've moved on a bit here. I don't think anyone's interested in watching me individually screw each screw in and things like that, so I'm just going to describe what I've done. So the first thing that I did was mount the power distribution board, that very cheap thing from China that cost like £1. Yeah, this is it. So I used the standoffs that came with the kit, and it's mounted at an angle. So that means that the ESCs can go through this hole in the arm, and the plus and minus is soldered to the board there. Okay, so you can see there, this one here, plus and minus, this one here, plus and minus, and the same here, plus and minus, plus and minus. That means that when the battery is plugged in, and then this is the connector to go into the battery, the XT60, when the battery is plugged in, all ESCs will draw their power from this. I plan to add a JST connector for the future for FPV. I should say that if you are connecting your FPV gear to this, like skipping a step, and your FPV gear doesn't have any kind of filtration, you're going to get noise because all these ESCs are drawing power from the battery. So you probably want a separate BEC for that, but we're not going to get into that today. This is purely just the Quadcopter build steps. So yep, I have cable tied in the ESCs after that. That's what we bought the cable ties for. And then here you can see I've got all my bullet connectors connected into the motors just randomly at the moment, because we will be switching them around. That's why I use the bullet connectors, so we can switch them around, because the actual connector, the way that the wires are connected here, decides which way the motors turn. And of course we want some motors turning clockwise and other motors counterclockwise, so that's just plugged in anyway for there. And then we've got the motors underneath screwed in there, and a dab of Loctite here as well to make sure that there's no movement on the motors. Now you can see here on these motors there are some different screws, right? We'll get into that towards the end, because it hasn't been a perfect experience. by far, actually, this, and that's kind of the reason why I want to share this with you, so that I can sort of show where I went wrong, or where the manufacturer went wrong in this case. And I ended up spending probably more than I wanted to. I ended up burning a couple of ESCs and a couple of motors, but I'll explain that at the end. Now, I'm not going to do this for every screw, but I've got a dab of Loctite there on the screw. I'm just going to screw it in with my finger slightly, he says. And then screw in with an Allan key. And that's it, folks. That's how you screw in a screw. So here we go, we have something that looks like a quadcopter. Now, if you're wondering about this, this isn't part of the build. This is just so I can get some video footage of some of the first flights. But for some of you that are interested, this is RC Test Flight's vibration dampener. Now, a quad like this, at this size, with this size props, is gonna cause a lot of vibration, okay? And I have balanced the props. I use a Dubro prop balancer, which helps a little bit, but not a huge amount. You can see I've got tape here. And also those propellers that I bought weren't very well balanced on the hub, so I've just dabbed hot glue there, and they balance up perfectly on the Dubro. So I just want to go into how I've got the receiver set up, and also the CC3D. So I've got the CC3D here. It's stuck on with double-sided foam. We've got the port plugged into here, which goes into the receiver. We'll talk about that in a bit. But first of all, the ESCs. So this front arm is your first one. This second arm is your second one. And then the third arm is this one. And the fourth arm, obviously, that one. Now, it takes power from the back of the ESC, but it takes it from whichever last one is plugged in. So I've noticed that if I unplug this one, then this ESC gets a little bit warm because it's using the back. If I plug this one in, this is the one that gets warm. So it only seems to be using one of the BECs, okay? Which means that it's just powering this and also this off the back, okay? So the way that you plug it in is the white wire goes at the top. That's the signal wire, and then all the other ones, well, they just plug it in that way, and you won't have a problem. As for the receiver, for now, this antenna is supposed to go at 90 degrees. It's probably a little bit more than that, and I've just got it under the cable tie here of the ESC. But this plug here that comes with the CC3D, the first one is the power to the receiver, which goes in to B/VCC on there. So your power goes in there. Sorry, the wires are a little bit messy. But then after that, it goes in channel order. So you can see that after the white one, we've got the blue. So the blue goes into channel 1. It literally goes in order. So blue into channel 1, and then the yellow into channel 2. Can't see it very well. And the green into channel 3. And then the yellow into channel 5. And then the last one is your flight mode switch. So that one I've got plugged into channel 6, but you can plug that into channel 5 as well, which means that we only have one channel spare. So if we want to use a gimbal, we can only have the control on the pitch. Or what we can do is we can have no flight modes, which is how I'm setting it up at the moment, which means that we've only got the one flight mode, which is stabilized, and then we can utilize this other channel and have pitch and roll on the gimbal. I've not decided on that yet though, but that's how everything is plugged in. Okay, so let's get the flight controller set up. You're going to need a USB 2 cable. I'm going to assume that you already have one of these. I'm also going to assume you've got a computer, so I didn't include that in the price. You're going to need a couple of things ready. You're going to need your battery to connect into it, and you're also going to need your transmitter as well. So let's get on to the software. So you're going to need this software. It's called OpenPilot. It's going to take a while to open. You want to have your USB lead plugged into your computer before you open this. It's going to take a while to install some drivers, so be aware of that. Make sure that those have installed. I'm using Windows 8.1 here for this, so I'm not sure if you use Windows 7, you might have to get some different drivers or something, but it works fine with this when it's just plugged in. So you can see down here in the corner, RX and there, you want to wait until that switches on. And what we're going to want to do for the first time is use the vehicle setup wizard. So we're going to do that. You see here it says, warning, you must remove all propellers from the vehicle before proceeding. So we've done that. That is really important because you're going to be spinning the motors up and you don't want to end up, having your arm cut off or something like that. So let's press next. We want to upgrade the firmware and erase all current settings on there so that it matches the software of this here. So you can hear there it just turns off the board and it kind of powers back up and then it upgrades itself. There might be a bit of waiting around with this. I am doing it in real time for you. You can see it says booting and erasing the board. Please wait. Should take a few seconds. Just watching the lights on the board. They're still flashing. It's still doing something. We're waiting, I think, until... Oh, there we go. There we go. Board updated. There we go. So we can press next now. You just press next at this point. We want PWM because it's using individual channels. I think you can use S-bus, which means that all of the channels go down one signal, but our receiver that I've chosen for this doesn't do that as far as I'm aware. Anyways, I've got them all plugged in as shown before. I'm going to press next. We want multi-rotor, yes, and we want Quadcopter X. Now this is kind of like it lets you have like a hexacopter and things, but yeah, we're going to keep it as that. Press next. Now the ESCs, we're going to keep as this rapid ESCs and press next. We don't need to know anything about that, just press next. Now you need to have the quadcopter on a level service because it's going to do a calibration procedure, so you press calculate, just let it go. I mean, it's just incredibly easy setting this up, isn't it? I mean, it's got a wizard, so, it's just great, isn't it? So let's just press next. And this is where we calibrate the ESCs. So you have to just tick this. I've removed all propellers. The vehicle is not powered by external power. I confirm I have read and understood. What this is going to do is it's going to calibrate the ESCs. It's going to set the start and end point, right? So I think you see here when it says battery not connected. So if we press start there, it now says connect the battery. So I'm just going to do that. So there we go. We've got the battery connected. And then what you do is you press stop. And then the ESCs start back up again. And you wait until this stops here, you see. And then press next. So now it's going to calibrate the motors, the start and end points, and also make sure that you've got the motor spinning the right way around as well. So let's press next. So you have to press start here, and then you move the slider up until the motor starts turning. So let's move that now. You want to make sure that the motor's running nicely. it's not kind of stuttering or anything. Okay, so then you press stop, and then next, and do the same with the other one. Press start. You see, you want to make sure it's kind of not running perfect there. There we go. And I can see there, but you can put your finger against the motor and see that the direction is matching. Some people put tape on, so you can see that doesn't help me. I tend to find that getting my finger burnt on the motor is the way for me. So press stop, and then next, it's going to do the third motor. Press start. Yeah, that's running nice. And this is at the point where you would swap some of your wires around if the motor wasn't spinning in the right direction. I think I need to up it a bit. Yeah. Stop. And then next. And then the last one. Yep, that's good. So press stop and then next. So here we've got the option to set up, like, have kind of like a template. So this is like a DJI 450 clone. I don't expect it's going to fly perfect on this, but it's like initial tuning. Okay, we're going to get into how to tune it in a bit. So let's press next on there, and then this is going to save it to the board. Please wait, controller is rebooting. This can take up to a minute. Oh dear, what are we going to do for a minute? I don't know. Ah, there we go. So, the transmitter setup wizard. At this point, I'm going to turn on the transmitter, which is here. So let's turn that on. It's bound already. So, transmitter setup wizard. We want to go click on that. Arming settings are now always set to disarm. So that just means that the props aren't going to turn, and we have to change that setting in a bit. So we go OK. Okay, then we want to go. So welcome to the input configuration wizard. Please follow all the instructions. Yeah, blah blah blah. Next, acro mode we want because we're not to helicopter. So next, I'm choosing mode 1 because that's my setup. So then next, please move each control in the direction. So it's recognize that. That's good. Aileron and elevator and rudder. And then the flight switch, which I'm gonna use the knob on the transmitter here for now, and we're gonna change that in a bit. And then for the accessory, we're gonna skip those for now because we're gonna change that in a bit. Skip accessory. What's the same? Please center everything. So let's make sure it's in the center there, and that's in the center. Okay, and then press next. Please move all controls to their maximum. So it's finding the maximum here. So I'm just doing that quickly. Move the flight mode switch. There we go. I think that's done it. See, yeah, very nice. Press next. Now it's going to check to see if anything is reversed. So let's see. Yeah, my elevator is reversed. Oh, this is so good, isn't it? Elevator reversed. So let's see. That's going to be pitch, is it? Yeah, there we go. So now it's going the right way. Everything's going the right way. That's great. Okie dokie. Right, so next. You have completed the wizard. Excellent. Just press next there. Now you see here, arm using the throttle. I'm going to change that to your right because that's pretty much what everyone uses, the kind of standard. And we're going to press save there in the bottom corner. So now if I move the yaw,
armed,
we get a nice armed sound. And then the motors start going. excellent stuff. So if we do the opposite maneuver to that, it doesn't say anything, but it does disarm it. Okay, so we've done that. So we've got it set up. Now we could fly it like that, but I wouldn't recommend it, right? Because there's no kind of like flight settings or anything like that. Tuning settings, should I say, sorry. So what we're going to do is on one of the knobs on the controller there, I'm going to make it so that the P gain is on there so that we can adjust it in flight. Now this is definitely the most trickiest part of the whole sort of setup, right? So you're going to have to bear with me. So you can see here that we've got this flight mode here, and if I twist the knob on the TX, it changes between the flight modes. Now what we're going to want to do is change this flight mode so that it works on the P gain, because this quadcopter is not going to fly very nice. I wouldn't recommend just flying it just with these settings. It's not going to fly very well. So what we're going to want to do, and it's really tricky, this part, so if you follow me it should work, but I may find some problems myself on the way because I've never managed to get this work consistently. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to the flight mode switch. You can see we've got 3 different flight modes here. I'm going to change this down to 1. And that's just going to give us the stabilized flight, because we're not going to want to use any of the other ones for now. You can later. So if we press save there and then go back to the RC input, this should just give us 1 flight mode there. And if we twist the knob, it should only move once. Okay. So what I'm going to do next then is on the accessory note, I'm going to change this to PWM. And we're going to also change this to channel 6. Now, because we haven't calibrated it, we're going to use the same calibration settings as the one, as the previous one. Okay, so copy that, copy that, copy that, and copy that. Now, can you see there, it's changed this one back to 1501. I don't know why it does that, but that can just completely crash the whole thing because the thing won't arm if this is set to there. So I want to change that to 1000. Really no idea why it does that. I don't know if it's a bug in the system or a bug in the way that I'm doing it, but if we press save now, then hopefully this one should mimic that top one there. You can see there. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is set up so that this accessory 0 is connected to the P gain. So we do that by going into this TXPID here and enabling it here. It's actually already enabled on this one, but you can see there it says after enabling this module you must power cycle before use. So it'll look like that when you get it. So we tick that there, but here we want to change that to roll and pitch KP, which is the P gain. You can mess with all the other things if you want to, but this is going to have the most significant effect on the flight characteristics. Okay, so let's press that one. You can see there it's linked to accessory 0, and then you've got the minimum and maximum. Now this is important because it's set to the same at the moment, so it's not going to change. Got TX beeping at me there. So we want to change that from 300 to about 800 for this particular setup. Okay, and can you see there it says when armed, so it's only going to change it when armed. That can be another factor. If this doesn't work, then it's probably because your quadcopter is not armed, but I'm sure we'll come to some other problems. Now you see after enabling this you must power cycle. So if we press save here, we've got a tick there, but now we're going to power cycle. That just basically means turning the thing off. So I'm going to unplug the quadcopter and also unplug the USB there. We've got the sound there that shows that I've done that. So I plugged it back in, and I'm going to plug back in the battery as well. So that's the ESCs starting up. Now sometimes it doesn't always save everything, but it seems to have done here. So yeah, that seems all fine. Let's go back to the input to make sure that it's saved it as that. Yes, so if we go now to stabilization here, and it'll probably be on basic settings at first, but if you go to advanced there, and if we arm it now,
Armed.
see it says arm, this is shot up to 300, and if I move the dial, you can see there that it moves the P gain up so that when we fly we can adjust it. And then, of course, once we've found the sweet spot, we can come back and plug it in and look what the sweet spot is, and then save it, and then turn all that off and put it back. But for now, we're going to keep it as that. So before you fly, you just want to set up the failsafe. You do that by long pressing OK, going into System, and then down to RX Setup. There, and then we want to go down to failsafe. And you can see here, it looks like it says channel 11, 12, 13, but it's not. It's channel 3. Okay, and you can see there, channel 3, we've got minus 100, which is correct. But if you want to know how to set that, you just go down to it, press OK. You can see that failsafe on. You can turn it off there. So if we long press cancel, sorry, not cancel, go back into it, failsafe off, then okay, you see it turns it off, but obviously we want it on, so go into it, long press on, you can see there, and then if you just hold the throttle and it'll failsafe wherever it is. So if we do okay, sorry, long press cancel, and then long press cancel again, funnily enough saves it. You can see there we got 100% cut off, and you might want to check that before you put the propellers on, so you can bind it and everything and get the propellers, get the motors running and then turn it off, and hopefully the quad should turn off. I think that's better than trying to have it sort of half hovered to the ground. I think that's dangerous. If it loses range, it's best to have it fall out the sky. It's going to break your quad, but it's going to find the ground a lot quicker and probably not fly away and be more dangerous. Now, I would have liked to have said at this point that everything was fine and I got it flying perfect, but that wasn't true. I got this intermittent motor problem, and you can see it here. I throttle up and the motor wouldn't turn properly. And it was on each individual motor that this would happen intermittently, and then eventually the motor would catch fire and blow up. Now, I could switch the pins around, the bullet connectors, and get it flying, but you could see here, eventually, one motor would cut out and the thing would flip over. I really didn't know what was causing it. I figured that because I bought really cheap parts, that it was just failing, and some people suggested it was a cold solder joint on certain forums, but I resoldered stuff here, and you can see that a different motor has stopped working here, and I'm frantically trying to mess around with the bullet connectors to see if there's a bad connection and get the thing flying again. But no matter what I tried, and you can hear a big sigh there, I was ready to pack this project in at this point. I really, for whatever reason, could not figure it out, and it's so obvious to me now, and I think the fact that this was so cheap that I persisted with it. But as you'll hear in a second, I was ready to completely give up on this. I think I gave up with these. I had really had enough, honestly. I'm again trying to flip around the bullet connectors. I mean, it's completely obvious now to me why sometimes flipping the bullet connectors work. So the motor pulsing and twitching like that is evidence of a short. In fact, if you disconnect one of those wires to the ESCs, you will definitely get that pulsing. Here you can see the propeller not turning, and it is due to the fact that there is a short somewhere. And I think, a big sigh again from me, I went through 2 ESCs, they caught fire. I went through 3 of these motors. It's a good job they're so cheap, and it was so spectacular when they failed as well. Clearly, as there was a short, there was smoke billowing out of them. They were getting ridiculously hot. I mentioned that I give up again. This has to be the most spectacular crash of them all, and this is one that
Yeah,
I
that's perfect.
I caught on. I say that it's perfect. I think I throttle up and I get complete failure of everything.
That's not good.
Now, this is the motor mount screw that came with the first kit, and this is the motor mount screw that came with the second kit. Notice any difference? So what was happening was the screw was too long and it was touching the back of the motor. So with all 4 screws in, it was actually shorting itself out on this metal back of the motor, and a few of these went up in flames, believe me. Now, I read a lot of things online that said it would have been a cold solder joint on here, and that would cause a short and cause the motors to do the pulsing and catch fire and things like that. But what actually did it for me was I was having the motor problem. I took the motor off the arms and it miraculously started functioning correctly. And so I thought, that's strange. I screwed it back on and it had the problem again. And that is when I discovered that the screw was too long and touching the coils of the motor, which was shorting everything out.
It's a really windy day.
So this is the first video that I took after realizing that it was the screw that was shorting out all the motors. And so as you can see, I connected the P gain up to channel 6 so that it's on that dial there. And I'm just flying it around for now, just relaxed, knowing the fact that one of the motors isn't going to cut out. And that's a big thing, having confidence in the fact that the quadcopter isn't going to fall out the sky, because when you get to a quadcopter of this size and it starts to fall out the sky, it gets quite dangerous. So I'm really glad that I've got that ironed out. You can see me again adjusting the P gain and just sort of flying the quadcopter from left to right there. Now, as a sort of rule of thumb, what you can do is if you have the P gain really high, it's not gonna do any damage. It's more dangerous to have the P gain too low because the quadcopter loses control and will fall out the sky. But if you've got the P gain too high, it will oscillate and be really twitchy, and you just want to lower it down to the point where it's stable. And I think this ended up being at about 0.4 to 0.5. And what I realized was this is using the 3-cell 3000 milliamp zippy battery that we bought, and when I added the 4-cell battery that I already had, I needed to adjust the P gain slightly for the extra weight. So for now I'm going to keep that on that dial so that anytime I add an extra gear, I can adjust it for the flight characteristics. Now this is enough of this view, so how about we switch over and check this out. This is the onboard view with the Xiaomi Yi camera and the RC test flight vibration mount, and I just love this shot. And I should say this is with the 4-cell battery that I have, so it flies really nice on the 3-cell battery, but you just get that extra oomph with the 4-cell, and you can get some serious height and power with it. Now, it's a little bit shaky from this view. There's some serious amount of vibration that goes on with these bigger quadcopters. And it's an incredibly windy day there. You can see that it's getting blown about, but I assure you from the ground it looked quite stable. Now look at this dive that it's going in. Despite the fact that this is that stability mode, there is a lot of leeway in the flying. I mean, you can seriously abuse the sort of the forward angle on it. I mean, I am putting full tilt on there, and I do a couple of dives where the flight controller just handles it so well. This is just really good flight controller. It's a shame that it doesn't have altitude hold. I think that'd be a nice feature. Now, as I say, this is a cloned version. It costs like 10 quid, you saw when I bought it. I think the genuine CC3Ds cost about £30 to £50 for this version to get a nice pirouette in there. It's so cool. and then look, this massive dive, and it's just with my micro quadcopters, if you try to lose any height, the thing starts to wobble and become really unstable. You don't get that with this. Anyways, I was talking about the flight controller. So there's no altitude hold on this. There is a version of this board that I believe has altitude hold, and you can add GPS, and I think that's called the Revo version. You can hear that little beep there. That is just the voltage alarm that I've got set. You saw me buy that earlier. You need that when using lipos, and this particular battery, it's not the nanotech battery, it's another battery that I got from Banggood, and it tends to kind of, when I punch the throttle, it tends to draw a lot of the voltage, and it causes the alarm to go off intermittently, but still getting decent flight out of it. When I first hear the alarm beep just once, I tend to ignore it. It's when the alarm is beeping consistently that it's time to land. So yeah, I really like this shot. I think I will keep this shot for when we add FPV. Some people put the camera right at the front, but I like that the arms are in shot here. You're not going to get any amazing stable footage anyways from a camera that's not on a gimbal. So yeah, I really like the fact that we can see the arms, and this Xiaomi Yi camera here is capturing the props quite nicely as well. You don't get that horrible kind of prop effect. I think that's because it's shooting at 60 frames per second, even though that this is going to go out at 30 frames per second. You can see when I punched the throttle there, we're starting to get more voltage alarm, but look at that height. Incredible height, and it just keep going and going. The only reason that I stopped is I'm flying this line of sight, so the things start to get very small in the sky at this point. We must be, what, like, I don't know, maybe 300 meters here, maybe even more, I don't know, it's hard to tell. But yeah, we're getting kind of shakes here. I mean, it's looking quite stable on the ground, but it's really, really windy and it is blowing it about, so the vibration dampener are doing a good job. I mean, look at this dive! We must have lost like a couple of 100 meters there straight away, and I literally just back off the throttle, and we nearly hit a bird there as well, poor bird. But the characteristics of this, when you come off the throttle, I think it's just maybe possibly due to the fact that I'm using the bigger props there, is it kind of glides down like a plane. So the alarm's starting to go off here, so I think I just do a little bit of flying around, get some nice turns in. Some really cool footage, I really like this. Starting to get some really fast flight. And I didn't go full speed here. You can get some serious speed if you go full tilt, but the reason I didn't do that is because when you do that, you just get like a full view of the ground, and I didn't want to do that. We do some pirouettes here. Apologies if this makes you feel a bit sick. Didn't realise that it would look this insane on the video. A lovely big dive here. Flight time. Right, so with a 3000 milliamp battery, 3S, and the 4S 4000 milliamp battery, the flight time's actually not that much different. I'm getting about 10 minutes. I would like it to have been a bit more. It probably would be more if I wasn't flying it so aggressively like this. And we've got the voltage alarm pretty much constant there. But yeah, you're talking 10 minutes with crazy flying, maybe 13 to 15 minutes with steady flying. I'm hoping that when I put a gimbal on this and things, that I'm going to get better flight times because I'm not flying so erratically. Yeah, so there we go. You know, this is from shop to flight. Really just, it's you know, it's been a crazy experience really, but I'm glad I persisted with it, because a lot of time and effort went into these videos and went into selecting all the parts and reading about it, so I'm really glad that it worked in the end. Just look at the acceleration there, it's just crazy. Yeah, so thanks to everyone who made it this far. I hope you found this video interesting. It's definitely been an experience for me. Please let me know what you think in the comments, if you thinking of doing this sort of thing yourself, or if you've got a better setup or anything like that. Thanks a lot again for subscribing. Those numbers are going up really fast, so thanks for that. And cheers.